My name's Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. I just want to thank Eric for asking me here and for showing me this platform. I enjoy it. I have logged on a couple times now, and I think it's great. It's easier than driving, that's for sure. So basically, here's the deal with me. Um, I've been sober for 4 years now, and that's good. I'm very happy about that. Basically, the way that I got here was, I'll give you the shorter version because I'm old and the long version is long, and we don't have time for that shit. So we'll like speed it up. Just recognize like trouble, 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 and like then I was in my 20s and like trouble and trouble and trouble happened, and then I moved to Boston. So I moved to Boston in 2007 due to the trouble from drinking. And so I got sober in Boston, right? 2007. I hooked up with a bunch of people in young people meetings and went to meetings, had a sponsor, joined a bunch of groups, had positions in the groups, and had a great fellowship of friends and got to do a lot of stuff I never did before. I traveled a bunch and got to, just be a regular person. I went to school and I did well and I had jobs and like I didn't get fired and it was great. In 2013, October 2013, I celebrated 5 years and immediately went and drank. Some events precipitated that. Mainly, to be fair, some of the more important parts to remember for myself is like I just stopped going to meetings. I really did. I just didn't go anymore. I had no service positions. I had no more sponsor. He moved to California. I was not working with anyone else. And, I was doing great though in like all the other aspects of my life. So I was like pretty busy doing all that stuff and decided, it was more important to do that. And I was just too busy. And then some things happened and I worked in a bar, no problem. And I still, to this day, I don't think there's a problem with working in a bar if you're sober. I know a million people that do it, and it's fine. It just like happened that that was my job. And, some things happened in my life, and I was like, I should just drink. I should just drink today. I should just drink today. And then I decided I was going to, and I did, but not in the place I worked because they all knew I was sober. I worked there for a few years and they knew I was like the sober guy. And so it would have been weird to drink there. So I sneakily went directly across the street to the bar that everybody from there went to after work. And the thing to remember for me is like when I was drinking, when I was a kid, when I drank Natty Ice, Beast Ice, 40s. Like when I was balling, I drank Budweiser and like that's what I got into, right? And I saw these IPAs coming out and like all these fancy ass like Cambridge kids were drinking IPAs and they all had cool ass names and they had like designations of how many minutes it took to drink the beer. And I just wanted to be involved in the IPA world because I thought it looked awesome. So I got an IPA and it was fucking bad. I didn't like it. Um, they're gross. They're gross. It's a gross beer. So I finished that one. I ordered another one because I just didn't want to look like I didn't know how to drink IPAs, right? So like the bartender watched me drink it, and like he probably could tell. He was probably like, "This kid is definitely not like a fancy pants IPA drinker. He should have ordered a Bud," which they didn't sell. And so I got another one. And it was gross, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like the grossness, and I feel gross inside because up until an hour ago I was sober 5 years, and like that was probably really important. So I went to Copley Square, which is like the center of Boston, kind of where there's like a couple nice churches and there's a ton of meetings I used to go to there. But the important thing for me was there was a lot of homeless people there. And like all my years like running around the country, like doing drugs and drinking, I knew that like homeless people were the key that would open the world to me. And they were, and they are, and like they did. So I was off and running immediately right then. And, you know, I tried a couple times in that like very early period to get sober again. I really like, I knew what was important. I knew I needed to go back to meetings. I knew that I needed to reconnect with my people. I knew I needed to like just do it all over again. And I knew that I had done it before, and I knew that I could do it again. But for some reason, I just couldn't. I couldn't. I really couldn't. I even got over the shame of it. I didn't care so much about the shame anymore. I just like couldn't put enough days together to make the days matter, like get over the hump. Like I would just go out and go out. And like this went into a really, really bad place for me. I ended up getting involved in like some really nasty stuff in Boston, and getting involved with like really nasty people that did nasty things. And like eventually, a kid, like, so I went to school for science. I love science, and like I wanted to teach environmental science to kids, and like I wanted to do green energy and like enjoy the world and like talk about scientific properties of things. So like I went from being like that guy to like a guy who was like running around the streets homeless with weapons and like putting fear into people's hearts for money, and like was wanted by the police. My picture was in the fucking papers and the news channels. Like Fox 25 was trying to blow up my spot to work. So the other channels, like Channel 7 is my channel around here, they didn't really care. Fox 25 was coming hard though. And, it worked. Eventually they got me. And that was February 25th, 2015. Oh, also, I might want to mention, 2015, scientifically speaking, it was the worst winter Boston has ever seen. There was over 110 inches of snow in like a 4-week period. It was madness. And I was outside for the whole thing, and it sucked. It was not a fun time. And, I was going to go out in a blaze of glory because I had a lot of suicidal ideology, and I was like, I'll let the cops kill me, because like that's when they were killing people a bunch back then, right? And I was like, as soon as the cops come, I'm just going to get in like a gunfight with the police. And like, that didn't happen. As soon as they stopped me, I like dropped to the ground and like almost cried, almost pissed my pants. It was a terrible moment. But I haven't had a drink since that second. That was a good day for me. I mean, technically that day sucked. Like it was a really rough day and it wasn't enjoyable really, but it was a good day that it brought me back. The rest, right? So I go to jail obviously, and like I get charged with a bunch of crazy things, and I decided I would get sober again, and I decided I knew how to do that, and I knew there were people that would help me do that. So I called upon them, and like people were there. People were writing letters for me to judges, to DAs. People were helping me with lawyers. People were sending me AA literature in jail. Like FYI to people, like you can't send hardcover books to people in jail. So like don't send them the big book, because they just send them the hardcover book, it gets returned, and then they got to get the softcover one and get it back, and it takes 6 extra days. So just like skip all that. Hardcovers are no good for jail. So all your people that are locked up, just give them like regular books with no hardcovers, because they can be used as weapons. So I was pretty quickly known as the sober guy in jail, and like in jail there's a lot of drugs, and I was lucky enough. I had people that were giving me money to buy, you could buy a lot of snack cakes and cookies and shit. And like, I was housing that. And so that's all currency, right? Soup is money. So people would come in with drugs, and they're like, oh, like, here's a drug addict kid, like he'll buy the drugs. And I was like, nah, I don't do drugs. And they're like, yeah, what? What do you mean you don't do drugs? Like everyone does drugs. Like even people that didn't do drugs in the street, in here they do them, because what else are you going to do? Like this is what happens. And so I just didn't. And like kids would come in, and they would be on the street, and like they would be just total alcoholics and like maniac messes, and they would see me, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't do that. And I didn't do it before. My life was great. And I'd show them pictures. I had people sending me in like physical pictures, like you could hold, like real pictures, not like from your phone anymore. And they're like, oh my God, this looks amazing. You had a great life. I want that life. So I would read the book with them, not like, oh, you better read this book, but like I am reading this book right now, and if like you want to read it with me as well, we can do that, and people were like, oh yeah, all right, that sounds great, and so we would do that. And then we would talk about sobriety, and I would talk about my experience that I had. And like all these kids, I was like, look at me, man, I'm a goddamn saint. I'm in here, I'm sober enough this whole jail, like they're gonna give me medals one day, right? And like the minute some illegal substance will come into the unit, the minute people will bounce. They just bounce, go and do the thing. And like I got really frustrated at first because I was like, oh, I'm just trying to create, this environment where people can be, able to learn about sobriety and become sober. And like, they don't care. They literally don't care. They just had nothing better to do. And like, it turns out whenever I was reading the book, like I was eating cookies with people, right? And so people just were like, oh, I'm going to eat cookies with this kid. I don't care what book he reads. He reads any book he wants, as long as he keeps those cookies coming. And, that's the way it went for a long time. And like, finally, all the work that people were doing on the outside, like people were talking to the mayor and like these judges, like these like fancy Supreme Court judges. I'm like, this is just craziness. I can't believe people are being nice to me still after all like terrible things I've done out there. I ended up getting a pretty decent deal. And like, I did the rest of my time in jail, and like I got out of jail, and I just went right back into it. I called all the people that, I used to hang out with that were sober. All of them were still sober now, and they were all like living a good life. And I jumped right back in. And so ICYPA, the International Conference of Young People in AA, right? It was this thing that a lot of my friends were involved with. They were bidding for it at the time, trying to bring it to Boston. And I remember thinking, like, this is the lamest thing ever. This is my first sobriety. Like, this is so lame. Like, why would you like pay all this money to go to like St. Louis, to that hot mess of a city, just to see people be sober, and like you could be spending the money going to Miami or something, right? And like, turns out it's like a little cheaper. You get like better room rates. You can like bunk up with some people, and like ICYPA goes to Miami also. So I was like, all right, I'll do that with you guys. I'll do what you guys are doing. So I joined the bid for ICYPA in Boston, and just got to like help out. I played a super minor role and just hung out with people. Really, I did almost nothing. I tried to help where I could, but I'm not that bright and I'm not that good at that stuff. So basically, it was just hanging out with people and just following them. And people were really nice to me, and they were very patient with me because I needed it, and I was very grateful for it. I very quickly, like, I met a girl, and like we started hanging out, and then I was thinking for a minute, like, should you even be doing this? Because like last time kind of didn't work out with this other girl, and like you ended up on the news, you know what I mean? Like you should watch out. But she was cool. She's like cooler than me and smarter than me. So like she helped me out a bunch, and like all my friends were very helpful to me. I now have, instead of like being a science teacher, I'm like a 9-time convicted felon, and like nobody was hiring. Nobody. I'd be getting job interviews for pretty decent jobs, and I'd go in and like everything's great, and then they're like, all right, well, what kind of computer do you prefer? We're going to set up your office now, and you've been hired at this rate, blah, blah. And they're like, just the last thing, like literally 2 days before I like supposed to show up to these jobs, like, oh yeah, we just like need your social. Like, we're going to run a quick background check. No big deal. And like, I'm like, yes, it's an actually enormous deal to me. And I should have probably told you it up front, but I was praying you weren't going to check it out. And they did. They always did. The good jobs are always going to take a peek. So that was bad. I was poor. I was super poor. But I got lucky again. Another friend in AA was like, hey, can you do this one little thing? It doesn't require, you to have never been a criminal. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I got really lucky again. A good guy in AA, he took a shot on me, and he gave me a job where so one of my charges was breaking and entering in at nighttime with intent to commit a felony, right? So breaking into this apartment to rob it. And like now my job is I literally have keys to like 300 apartments in Boston. And like I go into their apartments and fix their broken shit. And like I can't believe that like, people trusted me and like took a shot on me to like let me go in to someone else's house when they're not home and like fix their sink and shit. It's great. And I'm super pumped. And if it wasn't for people in AA, looking out for me, I don't know, man. I really don't know. So, you know, I, I got a sponsor when I got out of jail and like did the steps, and I had service positions in home groups and in like Ikipa service positions and all these other things, and like the recovery aspect's important to me, and the service aspect is very important to me. But I focus a lot on my fellowship because it's the one thing that's like it's always there, man. It just really is always there, and everything I've ever learned in AA is. I've never learned anything from reading the book by myself, never one time. Every single thing I've ever learned in AA about sobriety and about life in general has come from the people in these rooms. Like there's a kid here who like I learned how to like face, criminal stuff and like get through it and become a better person and like, proceed with your life and have a really good life. And like, that's the kind of stuff that's important to me, so now I look for the pitfalls. Things happen in people's lives. You lose jobs, family members get sick, family members may die, houses burn down, cars get crashed or stolen, and relationships end, and like all these things that are really tough things happen, and there's no way to avoid them. And so basically what I try to do now is like learn from other people that have been through those things. So my network is like large enough now that I know like, oh, this happened. Oh, my buddy blank, he went through this exact situation 3 years ago and he stayed sober, and his life is pretty great now. So why don't I ask him how do you do that? Like, how'd you get through that thing that looks like it's really tough? I've been very fortunate in this bout of sobriety. These last 4 years they've been really great to me. I've had very few pitfalls. So like, I know they're on their way. And not in like the woe was me, the other shoe was going to fall kind of thing. Just like in a life experience kind of way. I know for a fact that bad things are going to happen to me and bad things are going to happen to my family. And, I'm just trying to prepare myself at all times, basically, to learn how to stay sober through those things. Currently, I'm just like the happiest I've ever been. I'm getting married to that girl I was talking about. I get married in June, and it's a miracle that not like like someone else would agree to marry me like legally. I don't know if she fully understands like legally on paper, like she has to like be my wife. Like I own half her shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy that these things happen. I mean, I just wonder sometimes if people really, I don't know, if they really knew how insane I was, would they agree to some of the things they've agreed to? But I have a wonderful network of people in my life that help me every single day. I have a wonderful family, and I have a wonderful new family that I'm going to join. And like all that starts with AA. I never say no to AA ever. Anytime they ever ask for anything, which everybody always says that like, oh, I'll never say no to AA. Like most of the time they mean they'll never say no to being asked to speak, right? Like that is like 1%, because literally almost nobody ever asks me to speak, right? Most of the time it's like, hey, Kev, can you grab 3 coffees for these kids, on your way to the meeting? Or like, hey, there's just like really tedious project that we need done that nobody wants to do. Will you just do it instead of other people doing it? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do those things. I'm really pumped up about Ikipa being in Boston this year. I'm really glad that we finally got it, and it's going to be a really fun time. And it's amazing to see like all the work that goes on behind the scenes. It's like a wedding, right? You plan for a year and a half for a wedding for a 5-hour event. And like Ikipa is a 7-8 year planning process for a 2.5 night thing. And it's crazy the amount of work that goes into it. And like, I'm in awe of all the people that like are really doing all the big work, because I'm just sitting back kind of like helping out wherever I can. Cause like I said, again, I'm not like super smart at that kind of stuff. Again, so I want to thank everybody for allowing me to speak and for having this platform. And I think it's really convenient, and I like that because I'm a lazy piece of shit. Thank you.